I'm not sure if you ever got enough credit for your guitar playing because some of those solos and some of the stuff is really good.
I always felt like I was not, say, at a level of an Eddie Van Halen kind of guitar hero, but I could play in that league, and I had good friends.
Rock, metal, prog, and everything in between. Welcome to this episode of Talkin' Rock with Meltdown. Don't forget to follow the audio-only Talkin' Rock podcast on all podcast platforms. And now, it's time for today's conversation. Here's Meltdown.
You look great, Rik. My God, we're recording. Thanks so much for joining me. How's things with you?
Good. I just wanted to make sure that everybody saw this.
Oh, man, we had the, it's funny because we had the first game and we won the first game. And I'm like, and people are like, I hope that we play Canada again for the championship. And I'm like, be careful what you wish for.
Yes. Well, the big thing for me is more, hockey, good. That was great. But now we've entered into this thing where you've got a president that's being a little bit unkind to us, being very rude, very rude, very rude. So, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that we Canadians, we're a sovereign nation and we take that very seriously,
All
just
right.
like our hockey.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I think, I don't know if you recall, but last time I talked to you, I told you I grew up in Buffalo and I've lived in Detroit for the last 29 years. So I'm practically part Canadian.
Yeah, that's good. And, in truth, most Americans, look, my career, most of it, the success of it was Triumph got successful in America, and that made Canadians go, oh, they must be legit. Literally, most of my success has come because of Americans who generally seem to be good folks, but just this whole MAGA thing seems to be trying to turn your country back around. It's like you want to go backwards in time, and I don't think that can happen. I'm not sure about that, but I'm a musician. Time is a very interesting thing for me. It seems to be always constantly moving forward,
Yeah, that's true. And thankfully for all of us moving forward and moving well with your good health, I'm assuming right now.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. And I'm still taking some medications. I've been having some issues with arthritis, which, I guess you should get older. There's going to be something, right? There's going to be something. So it has been an interesting thing to sort of figure out how to be able to practice every day and play every day. And because I still want to be intense about my guitar. So, you learn to sort of how to compensate for certain things and take other things into account. And meanwhile, just keep kicking your own ass.
That's right. So you just mentioned something just a second ago where, you guys in Triumph did gain a lot of success here in the States. And like, as you put it, it kind of made you like a little bit legitimate of sorts. But it's funny because there's a band like, Tragically Hip that they never really, got any ground, broke here in the States, but they were just a Canadian juggernaut.
Yes, it's true. And I think, part of that is on some levels, there was a time when like Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, Gordon Lightfoot, there were certain kinds of singer-songwriter folks, and Americans embraced them. The whole world embraced them. Leonard Cohen is a good example because, no one would say Leonard Cohen. Well, he even joked about it himself. I'm the man with the golden voice. And I think in the Hips case, it was a question of Canadians embraced Gord Downie like he was the poet laureate of his generation. And Americans kind of went, who is this guy? What is this? He was kind of like Mick Jagger, but he didn't really sing in that, old school kind of British guy imitating R&B kind of way, So I don't know. We all found Gord Downie to be very charismatic, and I think Americans just went, not into it, But they were a very Rolling Stones-ish kind of rock band, very serious about their rocking. But they weren't like a Led Zeppelin-y kind of a rock band,
Right.
And I think like Zeppelin was never sort of meat and potatoes, right? And I think the Hip was kind of meat and potatoes in a certain kind of a way, Downie was definitely a lot of fruits and vegetables, but anyhow, so I think that was it, And the other thing too is kind of like Razzmatazz showbiz. Like Triumph was kind of we were blowing things up when I was running around in striped pants, and the hip wasn't really like that. Their showbiz was a different kind of thing,
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Did you know Gord?
I never got to meet him. I played some. I actually did a show where I opened for them at a big Ottawa Civic, the stadium, the Lansdowne Stadium. But and man, when Downey came on, I couldn't take my eyes off him. It was just like, wow, what is this? This is, and I thought it was great. But I never got to meet him. I've met the guitar players a couple of times.
Yeah, Paul's great. I interviewed him one time. And, I talked to the guys, like, ironically enough, 3 Days Grace is in town tonight. And I think that one of them, Neil or somebody, told me years ago that they think the reason, like, a 3 Days Grace and Nickelback kind of transcended America is because they kind of had an American deal. Did you ever have an American deal with Triumph, or did you guys just, through the radio and through everything else, just explode in the States?
No. That we made a deal with RCA in 1978. And RCA... we sued them eventually to try and get out of the deal, and because in their opinion we were never really going to be any bigger than Blue Oyster Cult, and Mike and Gil, the guys in Triumph, really felt like no, we could clout with Journey and Styx, and the guys that were going 5, 6, 7 times platinum. My partners really felt we could play in that league, and then we gambled on suing RCA to get out of the deal, find a white knight to buy us, and it turned out to be Irving Azoff of MCA Records, which became Universal, which is now they sort of own the music world. They're like a conglomerate, But back in the day, they were the worst label of the 7 majors. They were the weakest one, and Irving sort of said, "Look, I know we're the lousiest label, but I got the most money, so I'll make you a deal." And anyways, so. Yeah, that was our deal until I left the band in '88. So yes, 2 major labels, RCA and MCA.
Yeah, and spread across the America like wildfire back in the day. And of course, obviously I've read your book and I saw the documentary and stuff, and it was all about, it was all about loud. But of course, the songs were great too. And just listening to some of the stuff, and I think I've told you this before, I think obviously your singing, your songwriter is fantastic, but I'm not sure if you ever got enough credit, or maybe you did, for your guitar playing, because some of those solos and some of the stuff is really good.
Well, thank you. I mean, I always felt like I was not a guitar hero that was, say, at a level of an Eddie Van Halen kind of guitar hero, but I could play in that league, and I had good friends, Steve Morse and George Benson, and folks that I got to jam with because I was a columnist for Guitar Player magazine, which kind of gave me a guitar, I don't know, credibility on a certain level, so that I could like go to a Pat Metheny show and go backstage and go, "Hey Pat, hey, I'm the guy." Yeah, you're the guy that writes for Guitar Player. So there was that thing, but I always felt like the strength that I had as an artist was that I was a singer, and a good one. Not an incredibly amazingly great one, but a pretty good one for a guitar player. Mm-hmm. And then here's the songwriting thing. And I think of the 3, the songwriting is the one that matters the most. It's the one that if you don't have the right kinds of songs at the right kind of time, you're not going to be able to get on the radio. You're not going to be able to reach the folks in the, you needed songs that would function as vehicles for this, extravaganza that Triumph had. So the songs had to function on certain levels at certain times. And I think I was the guy in the band that sort of went, "Look, guys, trust me, my instincts in this are pretty good. I'm going to get us on the radio. I can get us hits, So, having said that, once I left the band, all bets were off. I was going to make music for music's sake, and I wasn't necessarily going to worry about hit parades or, pop songs or any of that stuff, which is not to say I ever lost interest in it. It's just, I just didn't want my career to be centered on that anymore.
Well, you got your new book out here, which I have a copy of right here. It's 10 Telecaster Tales.
Let's hold that up for the camera. There we go. Yeah, look at that. Yes.
And speaking of songwriting, there was a couple excerpts I wanted to ask you about because One of them it says the melodies I write need to possess accessibility and memorability so that even the casual listener might be attracted to what's going on. At the same time, the tunes need to satisfy my own artistic sense of originality with an element of novelty and surprise in them, so they feel fresh to me. Talk about that comment right there, because that was something that just kind of jumped off the page to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's three fundamental elements to music. You've got rhythm, melody, harmony. To me, and in the book I talk, rhythm is king. Rhythm is the thing that rules. So there's a groove that's inherent in everything. And it's inherent in melody, good melody. It's inherent in where I put chord changes in a song in order to give it a kind of a harmonic acceleration or deceleration, all of these kinds of things. So like music breathes. And so all of this breathing comes from the way the things interact, But of course, melody, the metaphor I like to use is the mailman's walking down the street, and his body is setting a certain rhythm, his feet on the ground, he's got a certain rhythm. But when it finally takes expression, he starts to whistle, and the melody is going to be the thing that's sitting on top of, everything else that's going on, So that's the thing. The accessibility comes from that. Now, having said all that, and going back to your question earlier about guitar playing, there's always going to be something for me where, because I've been doing it all my life, like started out as a kid, picking out melodies on a harmonica and singing in the school choir and the church choir. But, slowly but surely, I'm gaining insight into music all the way. I played violin in the high school orchestra for 4 years, So there's all of these things that are sort of accumulating. And then you get to a certain point when you're songwriting, you go, okay, well, there's a lot that I know. There's a lot that it's a part of who I am. So I want that to inhabit this song I want to sort of push myself. I want to try to see what, I want it to be engaging and surprising for me, not just for an audience. So I don't want to dumb all the way down so that it's, and, in some ways, Triumph was something where I would be going like, it's not really turning my own crank, which is not to say there weren't things in Triumph that did, but by the time Triumph got to say 1987, and I left in 88, but the record we made in 87, there was a track on there called Carry on the Flame, which I really thought it was interesting, good music, and, man, it got no airplay. The record company was not interested in it at all. There's even very few Triumph fans that will say, you know what my favorite song was? Because I think the band was already sort of going down. So there is something where you got to be careful that you're not just going for your audience and saying, yeah, I want to make them really happy. Because if you do that, your stuff might be weak. And, one of the guys that I like to quote, and I've seen this in my Instagram feed a few times, David Bowie was talking about, you go swimming and, you can swim and you can keep your feet, on the bottom. And, but when it gets interesting is when you get out over your head and your feet can't touch anymore. That's kind of when it's a little bit dangerous, a little bit more fun. And you do have to test yourself. And I think when you ask me about, writing a little bit over my head or giving myself music that's going to challenge me, I go, that's it. That's, I want to get into the deep water a little bit because I want to have some fun,
Yeah, definitely. Put yourself out there a little bit, challenge yourself in uncomfortable situations, perhaps.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, there's another quote that it kind of revolves around that as well. And it says, he said, critical judgment superficial reported that I was, for better or for worse, trying to superficially impress with my guitar technique and prowess. I certainly don't deny that. I tried to make the best of my skill set, but I can't accept that I was merely a show-off making one-dimensional superficial music. I thought that was kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about an era where first we were wearing spandex pants and all that kind of stuff. And then, it was hair because it was MTV. And so everybody's got to get into hair production. And, at a certain point, it's fun, but then you realize it's kind of nonsense too, And I mean, David Lee Roth once said, the music business is about haircuts and shoes. And in a way, there is that thing of, you're trying to fit into a style so that you can fit into a format so you can make things happen. But yeah, now I've lost the thread of the question. What was the question again?
Well, no, no, exactly like that, because what I took out of that right there was that it was a little bit of a superficial time. And while you still had to kind of, I guess, have your foot in that, you also wanted to be artistic as well.
Yeah, I got my guitar here. Can you hear this? Can you hear that?
Yep.
Okay, so always used to be a guitar solo, every show we ever did. And I used to do this kind of thing where I would go and hold up a hand while I was, it's like you're doing all of this. It's kind of nonsense, It's like and Les Paul used to do stuff where he'd go, like it's goofy stuff that's showbiz. And Chet Atkins once said, one of the big rules of show business is you got to try to make this hard stuff look easy. And then showbiz is you make the easy stuff look hard. So, and I think there's some real truth to that. When I play stuff, like I was practicing before I got on with you, and there's a tune on the record where I'm playing like a, and it's hard, but I can do it pretty good. I have a skill set where I can walk that bass line and I can play those little chords. I can make that happen, right? And it's so much fun because it cooks. Now, when you start playing jazz, you take your audience and you're just, oh no, like it's just the way it goes. It's reality. But that's fun for me, and so the challenge of that is, and here's the thing, like I was capable of that, but when you're playing in a rock band, in hockey rinks, that's not going to fly, and the other guys in the band would say, Rik, there would be moments where they would let me get away with shit. Like, on the Just a Game album, where I was really sort of pushing at the envelope with the other guys. And I was going, come on, you got to give me some room to do some of the things. And honestly, I mean, Lay It on the Line was our first big hit, and it was on that record, but it had like a bridge in it that was Queen guitars and big vocal harmony stuff. And they were going, what is this, But anyhow, at the end of the record, I'd written a tune on the road called Suitcase Blues, and it was very jazzy. And the other guys went, Rik, we're a rock band, And I said, I know, but this would be a real cool thing to have on a record. It would make a record a cool thing. And they went, okay, we can put it right at the end. It's like a PS at the end of the, So they let me get away with certain stuff, which, to this day, I feel indebted to them for allowing me that latitude. So.
Yeah, it's funny. I brought all my Triumph albums. They're all in my car, and I was going to hold them up and let you. But I decided, I'm not going to do that. But like, if you were like to just, where was the band like really at its peak, and what was like an album that you think that if you were to describe the band to somebody, that would be it?
I would pick one of the sides of Just a Game, one of the sides of Allied Forces, a little bit of Thunder 7. And somewhere in there, I think that would be my greatest hits of Triumph, Yeah. So, but I think the band was sort of at, everything has a cycle, right? And I mean, I guess the Rolling Stones belie that, but I think that, Triumph sort of started to find its footing around 78, 79. And then when we built the Metalwork studio and did Allied Forces 80, 81, like that was really kind of like we'd found ourselves as a band. So songs like Magic Power, Fight the Good Fight, that record kind of solidified this is what this band is, Now, on the other side, it had a Gil Moore thing, Allied Forces. That was his tune. And it was just gonzo, but it was really good gonzo. It was really sort of Deep Purple gonzo. which was the roots of the band. When we first started, we played Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple and Jimi Hendrix, and we were a cover band, and that's what we did. And then Allied Forces was kind of like we were taking those roots and making it be this just, steaming, pile driving, really good hard rock. And I enjoyed it. I loved playing it. So that was the record. I picked that one.
Now you talk about swimming in over your head a little bit, but when you're talking about in the early '80s when Triumph kind of solidified their sound and stuff, is it hard to go in the deep end and maybe try to go somewhere else that Triumph wasn't before, or are you really trying to keep your head above the water at that point? Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's why I would pick it as one of the good ones, because it did, it pushed, Fight the Good Fight was a record that had it was kind of reggae. And so when it came to that, that's not hard rock,
Right.
That's something else. But of course, it's very Led Zeppelin-y.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it was our roots, but it was finding an expression in something that was I don't know, I played little guitar pieces on every record, and the one that was on that was Petite Etude, and it was pretty good, And then a couple of years later, I'm on stage at the US Festival, and I pull that one out and I play it, And again, it goes back to this thing of, well, geez, he's a pretty good guitar player, he's not going to necessarily on this particular day give Eddie Van Halen a run for his money, but and a lot of those folks in the crowd that day, they were it was California and they were the headliner that day. So, but I think Eddie Van Halen fans would go, yes, the blonde boy from Canada. Yeah, we're going to give him some points for that. Okay,
Yeah, the blonde boy, right? Exactly. Well, and Eddie, not to take anything away. Eddie's, legendary, one of the best, but he played guitar. You did a lot more than that, in my opinion.
Yeah. And of course, Eddie did know how to write songs that Warner Brothers could, turn into gigantic hits. And he had a front man that was, a force of nature. He had a brother that was an incredible drummer, and the two of them together, there was this thing, And of course, people don't give Michael Anthony enough credit. As a singer doing backgrounds, him and Eddie, they were really good background vocals. They were shiny, and they were, they cut they made good records, I know they made great records. And then when they got Sammy, they made great records with him too. There was some really fine songs that, deserve to be on the hit parade and do great. So, he knew himself well. And the band knew itself and said, no, we're not going to do this because that's not Van Halen. This is what Van Halen is. And I think that's a very important lesson for all rock bands. You got to figure out what it is that you are, and then, don't paint outside the lines too much. Yeah, sure, go into the deep water a little, but, don't let the tide carry you away.
Yeah, no doubt. So with this book, and obviously the 10 songs that accompany it, what was where did this come from? And what exactly are you trying to accomplish with this book? Just teach people coming up, just write new songs? What's this whole thing about?
Well, first I designed this guitar and we built it. And then at the same time I was writing songs and guitar pieces. And I was thinking, geez, maybe I can play them all on the telly on this. I call her Babs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, so I thought that'd be a kind of a cool project if and then I had this ongoing book deal with ECW Press where I'd written a book of poetry. I'd done my memoir. And so this thing was developing in my mind where I was thinking, always loved back in the day when I was a kid, you got show you this, you get an album and you open it and there can be liner notes and there can be stuff on the inside where there's pictures and I liked that, and we don't really live in that age anymore. Everybody's, downloading and, streaming, So there's not as much of an organic thing for me as a writer. But I thought, geez, what if I got carried away with liner, like I'll really get out into some deep water here, and I'll write liner notes so comprehensive that it turns into a book. I'm going to go into that kind of depth. And I know that, some people, it'll just leave them, they'll go, what? Like, wow, too much information, no. But I do think there are some folks out there, I'd like to hope that there's folks like me, and they go, no, that's really interesting. That's fascinating. That's great. So my editor, Michael Holmes at ECW Press, he's a guitar player. So he goes, yeah, man, this is a great idea. And of course, editors, part of their gig is to sort of, smooch your ass and pat you on the back and tell you how great you are. Like, so they can finally get content. Like you'll finally finish the book and deliver it. So, he was a cheerleader and he got me through it and he loved it. And there's some stuff in the book where it shows my charts, the way that I write songs for myself on paper. And something like that, it's kind of like you think maybe that should be private. Maybe I shouldn't go public, but people will see, how weak I am at music notation and how I don't write it on the staff, and like that I just scribble this. I was doing one of these podcasts yesterday. The guy goes, "Yeah, they're like hieroglyphics." I go, "Yeah, it's true. It's just a code for me to be able to remember, what I'm doing, so that I can get it to a point where I can play it and memorize it, in order to record it." So anyhow, but my home says to me, no, that should be in there. Absolutely. They're fantastic. They're great. I go, okay. But they're in there. And even now I'm kind of going like, oh, geez, it's like people are seeing pictures of me at my grade 8 graduation, when I had really, pimples and, it was not good hair. It was a very bad hair day on grade 8 graduation day.
That's hysterical. No, it kind of gives you a little bit of an insight as to your thinking process, the writing process. And then you just mentioned that guitar there. How many guitars do you own?
Well, you can see in the background there, the Z's. Right. Like it's not as bad as it had been at certain points in my life. I would get up around 150 or some odd, and then I would purge myself and go, "This is stupid." Give some to charity, give some to school programs, give some away. Sell some so that I can fund my kids' college education. Which I did. I did that a few times in my life because I had 4 kids, so, and they all got degrees, only one went to post-grad, but whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, the guitars, it's like the Holy Grail, right? You're never really you're kind of like one of those nights for Monty Python where you're going, what about if it was a Les Paul with a blue sunburst finish, like it's ridiculous. But anyhow, so right now there's about, in this room, which they're all here, there's about 45, 46. And, I'm not counting the ukuleles and the violins and the banjos, because there are some of those too hanging on the wall. But no, the guitars is about 45. And truthfully, I really only get around to play 5 or 6 on a really strong regular basis. But once or twice a year, I do like to kind of go around with the polished cloth, get them all down, play them a little bit, clean them and put them back up. Oh, I'll put a new set of strings on this one, and then I'll have moments where there's a couple of them back there, they've got flat wound strings on them. So real jazz, and I'll get into a little thing for a couple of weeks. And I'll talk to the guy at D'Addario Strings, Larry Davidson, wonderful guy. And I'll say, Larry, can you send me a box of flat wounds? And he will, So it's nice to have those kinds of things to support your sickness. But anyhow, so, but generally speaking, I'm probably playing this guitar now 3 or 4 hours a day in order to get my repertoire together I got these gigs upcoming, which Lord knows why I was crazy enough to say yes to that. But
really, are those gigs in Canada?
Yeah, I'm doing a thing on March 21 in Collingwood, Ontario, where a podcaster like you, a guy named Brent Jensen, pal of mine, he's going to sort of do an interview like this, and then I'll have the guitar handy, and I'll play some things, and we'll do some Q&A. And so it's not like a full-blown gig. There's only a few sort of weird things. Like he's going to ask me, Rik, which songs did you wish you wrote? And I'm going to go, well, here's the chord changes to God Only Knows. Like I'm going to do some of that. But then on April 10 and 11, I'm doing shows at the Redwood Theater in Toronto. They're both sold out. Like, I didn't realize that there would still be this kind of hunger to see Rik live, because the tickets were not cheap, because it was a small house. But man, they went in like 24 hours, ba-boom, ba-boom, both shows. So, now I think, I better be good. Like, I haven't played gigs in years, and it's a lot of repertoire, because I do want to play all 10 Telecaster Tales as the first set. And then I said to Dave Dunlop, the guy that I used to tour with, hey, will you come and join me for the second set? And we'll, but I have to relearn that repertoire. I haven't played it in years, a couple of the old Triumph songs, but it'll be fun, I think, I might wear a tux. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe not. Yeah, whatever. So
maybe if you don't play good or sound good, you'll look good, right?
Well, yeah. Well, it's a nice place. Like, it's got a nice PA. It's got a nice little stage. Like, it's a classy little. So I'm looking forward to it. But I'm also, scared shitless. The water will be deep, my friend.
That's right. Well, I'll tell you what. I don't take up too much of your time, but the book is coming out on March 25th. Let me see if I can get that straight there. There we go. And, of course, the 10 songs, 10 Telecasters Tales, 10 Telecaster Tales. I could sit here and talk to you all day about your career and about Triumph, and it's always great to touch base with you. Good luck with everything. It's always great to talk with you.
All right, man. Thank you.